Hey everyone, this is Akeem of Sami Arts and Wellness. I'm here with interview number 2.
Dos, hey!
My brother Jason.
Aloha everybody, good to be back. Good to be back.
Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back. I think it's been a year since we've done that. Almost a year since we did that last interview.
It's been a while.
A lot of big changes
since then, right?
A lot of changes and everything.
Wow. And so what's happening for you as far as how has the need for Lomi Lomi, has it stayed the same? Has it changed in the need that you're feeling that the world needs this work?
It really has remained consistent. I think I go through these periods of where I feel very supercharged with it and I'm gung-ho with it and I'm wishing and hoping that everybody flocks to like take workshops or get sessions and everything like that. But then there's always this thing in the back. It's like, I don't want to pressure it too much. I don't want to throw it out there like a big car salesman would, or some real heavy gospel type of thing. It's out there if people want it, if people need it, if they feel like it's something that will connect in with them and will help them. I'm not necessarily a big proselytizer when it comes to Lomi work. I want it to be something that people come into and discover organically without being necessarily directed or guided to it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to help people. We all want to extend ourselves and extend our heart space out to help people, but we can't be rescuers. We can't force people into it. We talked a little bit about the analogy of when it comes to helping people, when it comes to even doing body work and everything, with the deep work, that you can knock on the door and let them know you're there, but if they don't answer the door and they don't let you in, you don't bash down the door and invade the house.
That is a big statement right there.
Yeah.
This is as a body worker myself, and both of us have had experience in martial arts, which means we pay attention to nuances of what our body is doing and what another person's body is doing. And in our process of helping a person doing this healing work, you're actually listening within yourself and you're stilling yourself. So then you can actually hear the other person. So when you knock at that door, like Jason's talking about here, you can actually hear it and not hear, oh, I forgot to pay the bill, or I forgot to do this, or I forgot to go get this for my kids, or you're not thinking about those other things. You're being present here. So how do you get to that place of like stillness?
When it comes to Lomi, I fall back on what I learned in years past before Lomi, when I was doing martial arts and doing meditation and doing a lot of the internal soft arts, as we call it, and learning about chi and learning how to move that in the body, and then coupling that with the Lomi training that I started 15 years ago, and learning about how the Hawaiians see energy, mana, and then learning how to cultivate that, which essentially it's the same thing. It's just a different lens to look at it with, and then doing the movement, because like with Tai Chi or any type of kata that you're doing, that's a meditation in motion. It's a ritual in motion too, really. And so you're getting connected into your body, and that helps you to get grounded. But on a spiritual sense, I guess, in an energetic spiritual sense, how I get into that mode is that I try to go completely hollow. I take on that philosophy of hollow bones.
And in shamanic healing, the term hollow bone is a reference that means that when the bone is hollow and you take a look at it, there's nothing that you can see that's blocking the passage of air through it. So it's clear, and it's a perfect instrument to be a transmission of, and this would be the transmission of energy and of love and of divine energy.
Yeah, divinity. It's becoming a clear and clean catalyst for the work to come through you. But in that, you get into this state, this kind of no-mind state, or this entranced state, which in a lot of ways is the shamanic process. And since Lomi really is in its own right, shamanic process. It's a ceremonial, ritualistic process, but it's a shamanic process. One has to feel and be clear with that, and doing that by getting in. How do you become hollow bones? The term hollow bones, as I understand it, was coined by Frank Foolscrow, who was the Oglala Sioux's former with Joshua Connor, their spiritual advisor, their holy man, and he always talked about whenever I did the work, whenever I did the healing work, I would go hollow bones, which meant that I had no agenda as to how it was going to turn out. I just remained hollow. I made this clear catalyst, and I let divinity come through to do the work. And I had very little to do with it, even though I was doing the work. So that was kind of the whole thing about hollow bones. But how do you get there? Yes. How do you get to hollow bones? Well, in this lineage of Lomi, it was always about ka'alele. It was always about flying.
Ka'alele, flying.
Yeah, that personal navigation where you're doing that back and forth stepping motion, where you're doing the kata of Lomi, and then practically applying that onto the body. But that personal navigation of moving back and forth, coupling your breath, making and doing these movements that seem like you're doing one thing as you're doing another. It's like that walking and chewing bubble gum, or patting your head and your stomach at the same time. You know how we kind of, that brain training type of exercise. But energetically, you're getting into that space of course, we talked about this in the last interview about getting in pono, yes. Getting in alignment, which to me would be the same thing as stating that I'm in a Zen or a grounded space, and being very, very present with it. I'm not out there. I'm right here. They go out there, or they're very present with it, depending on how you're doing the work, what your intent space is with it. But you are here, present. So that's how I get present with the work. That's how I got into that shamanic space of the work, was doing that movement coupled with that breath, and then just doing my very best to just kind of clear everything. That here we go again, clear, huikala, clearing, transformation, transition. That's how I get into that state and that shamanic process with Lomi.
Do you think it's important of the state that the guest or the receiver of the work is? Is it important? You mentioned that they could be here or they could be there. That doesn't sound, it sounds incidental where their state is. Is that true?
I don't, some might say that, yeah, they have to be in a state where we need to prepare them, and because they need to get into this state in order. No, I feel like whatever state they're going to be in is what they're going to be in. I don't want to force them to feel a certain way or get in a certain way, because obviously when somebody's coming to you for help or for healing work, they're already in a state where they don't feel connected, where they don't feel like they're here. They feel like they're out there. When really, in truth, they are here. They're just so scattered. Their brain is doing all this stuff. Their nervous system is reacting to it. Their body's reacting to it. Their spirit's reacting to it. All of this stuff all going on. It's like a storm, really. And we're not necessarily trying to match that. We're just bringing in something to help calm it down. Calm it down. This undercurrent and this wave, as we would call it sometimes. I don't want to say it's the wave, because we don't really call it the wave, but because of how we do things in Lomi, how things feel more watery, like a wave, everything. Sometimes the wave can stop the tide. Sometimes a different tide coming in, a rip tide, can stop one and calm it, whereas others will swirl it around and turn this thing, it just kind of goes back and forth. But with a person on the table, we're not trying to tell them, okay, you need to be this way, you need to be that way. Just get on the table, maybe take a couple of breaths, have them kind of say to themselves, I give myself permission to receive, and then see what happens, and then you do your work, and whatever is the outcome is the outcome. 9 times out of 10, the outcome is very cathartic and very positive for them. And that also depends on you. So I think a lot of it depends on you. Abraham Kavai always used to say, this from people who studied with him. I didn't study with him personally. I discovered Lomi after he had passed on. And so they would relate to me, and he would say, this, and his wife talked to me a couple of times, and she would say, this work is about you. It is about you and how you navigate through this world. And that one Hawaiian chant that I don't know the Hawaiian chant for it. I know the English in it, where it's like stars come, stars go. Ship goes, ship comes, ship goes, tide comes, tide goes, and I am in the center. I am in the center of it. So you remain centered, and you have that hollow bone mentality, and you're bringing in that space of aloha, and you're bringing in that pono to help them to feel a little bit more pono, to feel a little bit more in control, and to feel less broken and less disharmonic. And I think that's what we maybe touched on a little bit about what ritual and ceremonial work is that it is the vehicle through which we plug in or we seek to harmonize what we feel is disharmonic and chaotic in our life, which really brings in the complexity of Lomi, because Lomi is a massage, right? Well, it's more than that. It's way more than that. It's not your standardized Swedish massage or luxury massage. There's a lot more intentfulness with the work that kind of goes beyond what the traditional massages are out there. That's how the Hawaiian people created it. There is a practical aspect to it, and it does what just about any other massage modality would do: increase circulation, give you more range of motion, help you in those physical ways. But there's also something else at work there that we can't necessarily quantify. I mean, we can to a certain degree. We can give it these names. We can give it pono, we can give it mana, we can give it aloha spirit, we can give it all these names. But really, there's something really deeper that's unnamed that's going on in there. I think for me, the main thing about Lomi and what attracted me to it so intensely was the transformative effects that it had, the huikala, and then the cultivation of peace, the ho'omaluhia, the peace that's generated afterwards. Because for me, the best part of the Lomi session is when it's over.
Why is that? When it's over?
Yeah. Because
is it like where your time? I don't know. I guess there's this piece that felt for me when I practiced it. Is that it's like you're bringing strings together. You're working on certain limbs, and you're bringing this intentionality, and you're holding. It's like for me, I felt like I was holding and I'm balancing. It's like I'm holding this love and I'm balancing this love as I'm going to this leg, to this person's other leg, to this other person's arm, to their back, to their neck, to their scalp, and then they turn over and I'm working on them there, and I'm creating and I'm holding and I'm creating this flow. And there's this feeling of like divine carrying that's happening. So is it that when you're bringing all those parts that you worked on together, it's like kind of like a blot, like you bring it all together, and now that's the best part where everything is together?
For me personally, like I said, the best part of the Lomi is when it's done, because then it's okay. Now I'm going to sit here with this. I'm going to integrate what just took place, and then that feeling that I get after receiving it, and also giving it as well. Because in the journey process, we're going through all these experiences, we're collecting all this knowledge, we're going through a journey, right? Whether it be a road trip from point A to point B, or we're going through a therapeutic process where things might not feel as comfortable, but it's always about how we feel afterwards. We get up from the table and we feel, I feel so much better. I feel more at peace. I don't feel as broken as I felt before when I came in. So to me, like I said, the best part of it is when it's over. Not to diminish going through the actual process of Lomi and doing it. That in of itself is such an amazing thing, at least for me, when I'm performing it and when I'm doing it and leading class. Because it's taking kaulele, it's taking the flying motion and practically applying it and turning it into this seamless flow on the person and giving them an experience that they may have never had before in a massage session. And then it ceases, to me, it ceases to be about the massage. It just becomes the connection between you and that other person. And then you step away. And then you see what the outcome is.
So it's almost like you're like holding their hand as they're going into hopefully a transcendental process where they have cleared tension, they've cleared trauma. Sometimes people have received the work and you get up, and I've like sometimes been watery-eyed and had tears because there's a letting go that's also happening here, letting go of the tension, and it's also this trust, and that was also this other piece psychologically that oh wow, because I grew up a little guarded from public. We were in a nuclear family. So being in a nuclear family means you learn to trust just the people in your family. You didn't want to trust anyone outside of your family. It was almost like a them and then us. We're together, we're one, and we've got to be a unit too, which means we all have to have 1,000 hats. And this is the thing, and there's this feeling that came within me, a feeling like I could trust you to do this work, and I could let go. And it feel like a family member did it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Male, female, doesn't matter. It's brother or sisterhood in the spirit.
And it's a beautiful way to put it, because Lomi in of itself was not this kind of elite system that was so exclusive. This was something that was practiced by the whole family. Everybody did it.
So it wasn't just royalty.
It wasn't just a royalty type of thing. There's some history behind it that I don't really want to get into, but for this discussion and trying to talk to people about Lomi and kind of the essence of it and how we go about the process, really, truly, it is a family affair, but it doesn't necessarily, it transcends blood family, but that's also a part of it as well. We need to honor Gopuna, ancestors and elders and that sort of thing. But when we come to the family unit and doing Lomi in the way that facilitates that family touch and that sense of family, that I think is another after effect, I think, of Lomi, is that it helps to connect the family together by being of service, like the little kid is in the ohana and growing up and is just running around, blah, 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 blah. But then Auntie is there, Tutu, Grandma, Auntie is there, and she's not feeling very good. And she needs some care, then you direct the child, hey, go Lomi Lomi Grandma. And then they go and they start, kneading and rubbing, and which essentially that's what Lomi means. It means to rub. It means to knead. It means to massage. Knead like you're kneading bread or dough, that sort of thing.
Okay.
That's essentially what it means. More philosophical, whimsical terms, it means to weave, or it means to blah. It means all this, but really, truly, in its basic core, Lomi means to rub. So we could go even deeper than that and say that Lomi means to connect. To connect, to touch, to connect. And it was something that was practiced within the whole family. And Lomi was just a part of what their system was about, with their healing and with their spirituality and how they saw life, and based in the paradise that they lived in, and what they saw in the stars and what they saw around them, and their paradise. Lomi became a family service that family did for family, and then of course it became a little bit more structured to help people with ailments,
or maybe one to help ailments, or helping elderly, or helping someone who's going through something here and there, right? Now, not to liken it, for anyone listening to this, not to liken that being elderly means that there's a disability. It's not a disability. It's acknowledging that there are different parts that are experiencing different experiences. And what Lomi Lomi or any other form of massage, but particularly Lomi Lomi in this case, helps you do is helps you to see and address each particular category of persons experiencing a certain set of things. You're not going to have a certain set of like recorded, I'm going to do it exactly like this. Have you ever like felt like when you're in the middle of doing the movement that, oh yeah, this I'm just making the donuts, like Dunkin' Donuts, making the donuts, so to speak. So I'm just do this, and still be in this state of mind that becomes more than making the donuts.
It's an interesting question. I think in the beginning, when I still didn't fully embody, when I was still kind of in this mode of really learning the mechanics behind it, that there was a certain mentality I think that would be similar to that. I'm just making the donuts.
Yeah.
But as I progressed more, it ceased to be more of like, how I was mechanically doing. It was more about how I was feeling through the process and how I was connecting into myself through that process, and how, I don't know, maybe losing the train of thought a little bit, but it never was about making the donuts. In fact, there was no real thought, because and maybe this is hard for people to get sometimes. In the martial arts, this is the only way I can describe it, because it's the only way I've learned, is that in martial arts and learning a fighting discipline, you're very controlled about what you're doing, but you're also moving with this kind of improv as well, and you have this no mind. You're not thinking too much about what you're doing. You're just acting. You're just reacting. And so, how are you doing that? Well, you're learning kata. You're learning form, and you're learning it over and over and over and over again. And it seems redundant and seems boring, but what it's doing is it's teaching you how to discipline yourself to react in a way that's more focused and controlled, right? So somebody's throwing a punch and you block and hit at the same, and you do this movement and this simple movement over and over again, and that becomes the most effective movement for you. So now let's translate that over to Lomi and doing the katalele back and forth, and how katalele is the kata to perform this lineage and style of Lomi on the body. You do it so many times that it just becomes like breathing, and you don't think about breathing really too much unless something's happening where you have to think about breathing, like you get the wind knocked out of you, or some exhaust is coming by, you got to hold your breath and you got to do that. You become more voluntary with it, but the rest of it is just involuntary, which I think also speaks to the shamanic mindset of you're present and you're there, but you're also entranced and emotionless through it. But aloha's coming through, and you feel that love, but you're not necessarily, I don't know, people might disagree with this, but you're not necessarily loving somebody on the table, but you're generating that. It's hard to talk about this stuff. It is.
And I think I hear what you're getting at. The way that you're holding the state, it allows the energy to come through, and the energy doesn't have to be a smile. It can be translated as a smile when you're clear and it's coming through all the way, and you're not holding any of it. You're not moving this around, and you're not saying, well, I'm supposed to do this. You're not doing that anymore. You're in the being state. And when you're in the being state, some could say that is the closest way to let divinity move through you, because you're in flow. And you've heard people talk about it, being in trance. I'm on fire. There's a basketball term, right? I'm on fire. I can't miss a shot. It's because you're in that same flow. So Lomi Lomi is also talking about being in that flow.
Yeah, you're in the groove.
In the groove.
You're in the groove, and when you're in the groove and you're doing it, you're still in control, but you're also moving. You're just moving how you're moving, and it's weird. Like I said, it's hard to talk about it, to explain it in a way that is really coherent. It's an understanding that you just have to acquire, And I think that's why it's difficult sometimes to talk about shamanic processes, because sometimes it is hard to quantify, because some of it just seems so far-fetched and out there, or it seems crazy. It doesn't seem like the norm. But in actuality, it's the most normal thing you can do, really. The most normal way you can be. At least in my opinion, it is. But I've been walking that path for a long time. I think it would be the same thing as an accountant or somebody on Wall Street, that all they study is numbers and numbers and numbers, and they just live it and they breathe it and they know it, and they know when things are going to go up and when things are going to go down, even though sometimes there's still a roll of the dice on how things are going to go, but they still kind of can navigate their way through it, and they do. It's like the same thing. It just becomes part of you. It becomes ingrained in your DNA or in your blood or whatever. It's just you become, for lack of a better term, and I don't say this with any type of ego, is you become mastered in it. You become mastered in it. But you never call yourself that. That's always what somebody else calls you. But
this is the reason why I don't like to use the term shaman. You know, I've done healing work for people, and they've said, "Oh, you're my shaman." I'm like, no, I'm a person who helps facilitate your healing. And if it happens to be through massage, this is the medium. If it happens to be through shamanic clearings or pranic healing, or even if it's just coaching or just talking through something, you know, those are different ways to help. I'm not healing you. And I reason to say that if I'm able to hold that humbleness and that meekness the way that Jason Bratcher does so seamlessly, because it's a part of the way he lives. You know, he eats and sleeps and breathes, holding this respect and holding this cadence, and also being unassuming to such a way that it allows him to be authentic and not having to pontificate to, this is what these words mean. That means I need to fit in this box. And then I'm not being present anymore. I'm thinking about what I want to give. You see how I lose myself. And so this is the invitation to taking a look at. And within oneself, as we're talking about this and we're illustrating what it's like doing something like Lomi Lomi, and how beautiful it can allow such beauty through. But you have to have your heart and your mind in synchronization and in the right place. Your opu, you said? Which is
the
bowl.
opu, the bowl, the belly
the
is the opu, yeah.
Must be clean. And, you know, being breathed and being relaxed and being in, you know, this is the staff. You know, you set the staff in the ground. It's like, I'm here. And when people can feel that, they can trust that, oh, I can let go. And then the way that you hold the cadence, the way you hold your presence as you're executing this masterful work, this feeling of euphoria and, wow, it's not this hard, and I feel lighter, and everything that you were describing seems so much more possible. And for me, it added the extra feeling of, wow, this world isn't all bad after all.
Is that how you felt in the workshop? Because you took the
Yes.
3-day. When you first learned it, it was a 2-day kind of crash course for a little spa, but then I brought you into the 3-day workshop, you know, the big one, you know, where you've got the 3-day immersion. Is that how it was for you, and how was that 3-day?
Well, thanks for bringing that in, because there's so much to say about what it felt like. First, experiencing it in the first 2 days, which was the first way that I experienced it, was it was like, oh wow, this is here, because I'd already been doing massage work, and there's different modalities of massage work that I've done, and I usually spiritualize everything. This met my intentionality of spirituality with the movement, and even the way that we would open, and even doing the and I'll get into that with you, the etymology later, the ka'alelea, which is the flying. And the whole thing came together into this place that I felt like I was stepping into a new world. And from a perspective of someone who's done body work and done healing work for people before, even in multiple modalities, it was a breath of fresh air. Because not only did I get to step in, I get to step in, and it's almost like I took a trip to another side of the world. You know, it's like saying, I'm going to Greece. Well, I took the workshop, and it felt like I was going to Hawaii in some ways. you know?
Yeah.
And when I did the 3-day immersion after, so I got 5 good days with you. And yeah, for me, I was blown away, and I got even more partner participation this time.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about this work, and this is massage in general, you get to work with multiple people as you're connecting these concepts. And you're connecting the concepts and you're bringing it together, and then you're wanting to bring it together in a seamless way that doesn't feel mechanical.
Mm.
And I was, in the end of the workshops, was able to bring it in such a way, and it has also as a testament to your teaching ability, and you've spent years teaching people to how to get out of their own way and to listen and to trust and to open into the instruction and to hold the cadence and to hold it. It felt like a balancing act, especially the first day and a half ish.
Mm-hmm.
By that second day, it was starting to kind of flow in, and I also know that that was deliberate. The way that you structured the classes were very meticulously put together. Even the surroundings for the workshops, particularly the second one,
With all the banners and
you
all
had
the
banners,
everything.
everything was colorful. You had beautiful Hawaiian art there. You had beautiful Hawaiian music playing. So I'm feeling it. I'm really getting the full immersion, like you said. I felt the full immersion.
Do you know why I put all that stuff out there?
Why?
So, because I like to pair this work with body-based psychotherapy work, because I really felt that Lomi was a really good adjunct support system to people who were in psychotherapy for their physical trauma, either past or present, distant past. That with work like this that is very transformational and can be very experiential, there's also a certain amount of that emotional release, but there's also a certain amount of unraveling that takes place. And yes, I want to set the stage, and I want to make sure that what I'm putting forth, when you're walking into the space, you're walking into a space that makes it seem like you're walking into a heiau or to a different realm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but also there's another method to that madness. All of those banners and all of the colors, there's a lot going on in all those banners, and I wanted it to be in a place where wherever your eyes were, you would be able to focus in on those bright colors, and that brought you present. So that if there was any point in time in the workshop where somebody was really getting emotional and really starting to unravel on the table because of what's happening,
Wow.
that we could go in and help you to come back to that state by focusing in on those nice bright colors.
So you use light therapy.
Well, it's color therapy to a degree, but it's also, I like to call it, present therapy. Like it's like if somebody's unraveling and they're going back into that triggered state, and they don't feel like they're there, you as a facilitator have to kind of help to bring them back. And part of it is getting them back to here. Sometimes being in here, which is great, we all want to be in our body, we all want to awaken, spirit within the physical body with this work. But when we're dealing with folks that have not experienced that connection and things are coming up out of them, that can be a real intense process. And it's, the best part of the Lomi session is when it's over. Sometimes when you're going through it, it can be kind of this intense thing, but it's a good intensity. But in those instances where people feel like, okay, it's like, okay, what color is that banner there? What color is the kananaka? What color is the mermaid's tail? Oh, it's orange. Your hair is red. Yeah. What color is that banner there? What color is that flower? Excuse me. And they're like, it's purple. Everything, and then that brings them back to here, and it brings them back. So there's a practical side to this that isn't always a spiritual thing, because I feel like that it's real important to put that out, to say that. So that's a kind of a secret that I kind of wanted to throw out to folks who might listen to this and are thinking about, pictures that maybe that they've seen of workshop spaces that I've done, and all the colorful stuff that, I bring that in as kind of like, to set the stage, but there's also a real strong purpose, and that is to help people come back to the center. And they need to focus on it, and sometimes focusing in on patterns, in certain patterns and colors and everything, can really help bring us back into here, so that we feel more control of all of this. And that's also kind of the secret to Lomi, that when you're learning how to become Pono with this and this, that a lot of it will have to do somewhat with the external world around you.
Oh, okay. I want to ask you another question that's been leading to that. I want to make sure that I'm setting this up right here. Let's see. So, my next question for you is, if you're getting them into the body at the very beginning, because they're feeling all these sensations, and I've noticed something I've noticed as a massage therapist as well is there is an aspect where you can help people get out of their mind, because number one, people usually are in their mind in a way that they're not in their body, and as a result they also are finding it difficult to have prayer. I've heard people voice that it's hard for them to access spirit because you're stuck in your head, or you're in so much pain in your body and you're trying to undo it with the mind. And then this practice of Lomi Lomi is helping a person feel what's happening in their body, and then if they can stay grounded, they won't have to be transitioned to, oh, do you see the colors? To help be in your body. But those moments that you do, what does it do? It helps you access your mind. So I'm saying all this, building context here to say, is this a way to help people connect the mind and the body in such a way that it then makes it easier for spirit to come in?
That's the whole purpose of ritual and ceremony, in my humble opinion. The whole purpose of ritual and ceremony, I mean, we are literally defined by the ritual relationships that go in our body every single day, every single minute, every single second. What's happening now? Cells destroying, cells being created, physiological processes going on. One could say that is a ritual relationship that we have. And the ritual relationship that we have to our mind and the frontal cortex, how we process information, how we see everything, and then how we feel it, how we receive it, and how we feel it, and how that there is that connection. And ritual seeks to take what we perceive as disharmonic within our bodies and seeks to balance and harmonize, and that's what ritual does. That's what ritual does in a nervous system brain way. When we start to utilize the creative aspect of our being, when we start to expand our consciousness outward, and when I say that, we're not leaving this, we're still here. But when we start to use that creative aspect of our mind and our consciousness is branching out, because we feel connected in Pono here, gives us the stability to expand out and to be connected in with what we perceive as spirit, God, goddess, sun, moon, volcano, Pele, Pleiades, stars, Keala, Hoku, pathway to star, all of that stuff. It all starts with here. This is the vessel. This is the ship. And so this was something that I've tried to put forth towards students that want to do this as a shamanic process, that in this work, and this is a humdinger, is that the person on the table is the ship. They are the navigator of that ship. They are the crew of that ship. They are the sail, they are the rudder, they are the paddle, they are everything in that ship, the whole working order of that ship. And you as the practitioner, you as the giver, you're the ocean. You're the water.
Wow.
And you could care less about what that ship is doing on you.
Mm.
You're just flowing, and that ship has to navigate through what the ocean and the water naturally does.
Mm.
This is an interesting way to look at it, I think, because I think a lot of people want to feel like in healing work, I'm doing the healing. I'm touching you and I'm healing and all of that, which the power of belief can make you feel like that is actually happening. And there are certain processes and techniques in Lomi that kind of make it seem that way. But really, truly, we're going through these performative motions, and we might think in our head, oh yeah, we're pulling stuff out of you, we're doing all this stuff, but what we're doing is trying to get you to feel that within yourself and give you that responsibility, and putting that responsibility of yourself healing back to you.
Mm.
So that's why I always try to say to people, be the ocean, be the wave, be the current, be all of those things. Be the clear vessel, be the catalyst, be hollow bones.
Wow.
No emotion except love's coming through you.
Yeah.
Aloha's coming through you. Family's coming through you. All of that stuff is coming through you. It sounds really great and uplifting. You know, I can hear the choir, oh, it's so great. It's quite another thing to try to, to cultivate that within. It takes years of disciplining yourself to do that, and to what I talked about in the previous interview about manipulation.
Yes.
And how that can be something that is positive for somebody. When you're positively and mindfully manipulating somebody, you're not indoctrinating, you're just positively manipulating that person into feeling that clearing, that lift, clearing the bowl, turning the bowl, getting the emotional armoring off of their back while we're coming up, with that technique where we're connecting into the traps with our tool and coming up and doing our breath to that ha breath, that cleansing breath. In their mind, they feel as though that emotional armoring is being taken off. We're taking that off because they don't need to be afraid on the table. They don't need to feel, they don't need to feel like they're in fight mode or flight mode or freeze mode. But sometimes people get into that, and we sometimes have to work through that. It's kind of tough because, we operate on the scope of practice, and of course I'm trauma trained, and of course, I'm working with people who feel broken. But here's the other thing, and this is something I need to really emphasize to people out there, is that I'm not intentionally trying to trigger these things out of people. When I first started doing this work, it brought me back to some memories I had before about receiving just, hands-on healing type of work and ceremony, like in Inipi, like in the sweat lodge and that sort of thing, and then having the sage wafted over you with the eagle feather or the crow feather and that sort of thing, and how that made it seem like, wow, I'm being blessed, I'm being purified. But my simple mind was thinking to myself, my simple analytical mind was like, let's just smoke. It's just sage, it smells good, everything. But I imposed this meaning to it that made it more than just somebody waving a feather and throwing that smoke away. I was being positively manipulated into this state of, I am harmonizing with this. Instead of being told, you have to believe that it is this. You have to believe that it's that. You have to do this, because if you don't believe this will happen. You do that, that'll happen. This and that happen. That to me is dogma, and that to me is so far removed from what we do in the Lomi process. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you, because in the workshop, because sometimes I don't know, because sometimes I go off on tangents and I'm talking because I love the work so much. Do you feel like you're being proselytized to? And be honest, do you feel like it's like, oh, I'm telling you how to believe this or what to believe this? I think what I'm doing is I'm trying to teach people how to do the techniques and feel it within themselves, but I don't know sometimes if I'm, if I'm turning into that proselytizer, if I'm turning into that indoctrinator.
That's a powerful question to ask, And I think that's a reasonable question that every instructor, every person that's a healing facilitator should, in my view, should be asking themselves ongoing, in order to keep with the humbleness of it, because you're being given an opportunity here to help another person, another being, and your divinity is meeting that person's divinity, which means I have to do my very best to hold myself at or above reproach.
Yeah.
I'm holding myself and I'm holding them. And I'd say that for me, what I got from you is that you were showing me the tactics. This is, you do this, the movements, this is how you can do, and then you're hooking in, and then you're moving from there. You're helping transition the tension out of the muscle, lengthening out the fascia, connecting with those aspects. And because we added I say the chants, but that's also the singing along with it.
Yeah, the prayer, the pule,
the pule, and then we also included the flying to get it started. That helped to prime me to where my body could just be supple and prepared. And it's like you were making a framework, and then you had the second half of every class of those 5 days where you just got out of the way and you just let us play it out. So we could feel what's happening in our bodies, and you could feel what we're feeling in our bodies, and still holding the balance of giving the person that we're working with exactly what it is that they needed in that session, and that was really powerful. So it was unassuming, and it was not controlling. It was you wanted the framework to be set up for us, so that we can then just flow once everything else is set up, which I'd say that this is likened to divine masculine energy. Divine masculine energy isn't controlling, isn't manipulating, but it wants to set the containers, the margins, the boundaries, the cones, on a roadway for success.
And Pule prayer, because I've always had, I know prayer 3 different ways. There's the Christian prayer, but I didn't grow up with Christianity, but I grew up around a lot of that. Then there's indigenous people's prayer, from like Lakota and Cherokee, and how they prayed. I mean, that's the way that what we call it in English. It's something completely different. And then for Hawaiians, it's pule, which loosely translated would be prayer, but it's a different kind of prayer. It's not I wish for this to happen. It's more of like setting an intention or making an agreement, a temporary agreement between you and the receiver, which is why when Auntie Pualani Gillespie taught me the Lomi Pule, her Lomi Pule, that was kind of the agreement that we made between ourselves and the person who we're about to give, and the person who's receiving, which was, from sunrise to sunset, I release all to you and ask that you release all to me, and we stand together face to face forever, which lends itself to that really nice Hawaiian greeting, the honi, where they touch heads and share breath. They share breath and experience, and in the Hawaiian way, because Hawaiian language is a sacred language, it is a language that is living and breathing. It, to me, Pule and Oli and chant, and even Native American, indigenous peoples chant, like Lakota, songs and everything like that. Voice also is a vehicle through which we get into that Pono state, and how we express it. In that it's almost like here we are plugging in, with the Lomi Pule, with e we kala mai, we kala ku, we kala mai, e we kala ku, e we kala kako, kakahi I kakahi a maoloa. There's something about learning that and embodying those words, and how they make you feel, how they set you up to create this experience, but also saying that because of this transformation, this transition that is happening, I'm releasing. And I'm not just releasing, I'm clearing myself out, which is what huikala is. I'm clearing, I'm transforming. But sunrise to sunset also means huikala. And so we establish that rapport, we establish that connection with that person when we go to work on them. And that's why Pule is a very important part of Lomi. It's a very important part because it does set the stage and set the intention. The Ka'alele is for you to get in the Pule, and the Oli is for you in the gift almost that you're kind of giving them in a lot of ways. But you're also receiving that gift, you're receiving that grace, you're receiving that aloha space. But you're also establishing that with them, and they're hearing that. There's something about now if I were to say it in English, and we did this at the last workshop that we did in Rockdale, Texas, last weekend. When I was doing the English translation, and we're like, and one of the students was like, God, now how does that sound if we say it in English? And it sounded terrible. It sounded terrible, even though one of the students was very eloquent. I release all to you, and you release to me, release all to me, and all this stuff. But it still sounded terrible because our language, the English language, is a very conversational dialect. Even in our prayers, it's a conversational dialect. But with a singular language like Hawaiian, or a singular language like the Lakota language, this sacred language, there's a spiritual dialect that's almost different from the conversational. Because you wouldn't go up to somebody and just start conversing, hey, we call maya, we call it cool, hey, we call it cool, kakahi mala. You don't do that. It's something different. This is the spiritual dialect that has this weight to it. And that's also part of the ceremony and the ritual that seeks to harmonize us so that we can have a better relationship with the outside world around us. So we're really talking a lot of philosophy with Lomi, but then the physical aspect of it, we're learning technique, you're learning, these strokes and everything. But in that workshop, we never really went into why. Why do you do the technique like this? Are you just doing it just to do it? Why are you doing it? But then I say, well, don't bring your agenda into the workshop. You're not being the, I'm healing out, this might conflict with other people's belief systems. And we don't want to, we don't want to say, okay, this is gospel. We want to say, this is a possibility. This is how these people felt. Compare that to how you feel. If it makes sense for you, great. If not, move on. It's totally okay.
That allows you to be able to work with anyone,
To
not
work with
just
anyone.
people who know of the
Right.
work, right?
Right. So we never went into the why. Why do we do the techniques like we do? And it took me a long time to really kind of to decipher, at least in my own head, and then talking with other people about why we do the techniques. Why do we come up and go down like that? Why do we do this one movement? Why do we do this? What is it what's the practical application of that? Because that's that other part of my brain that's kind of coming in, which kind of made me feel that this is what the old shamanic people and the old medicine people had too. They weren't just out there on the clouds.
Right.
They weren't just in the other realms tapping into the spirit realm. They were very firmly rooted in this life too, because they had knowledge of plants, they had knowledge of medicinal plants, they knew how to set bones. If bones were broken, they knew how to heal wounds, that sort of thing. They had to be very mired in the present. They had to be very in the real and here. And then they tapped into that to get the answers that they couldn't get from here. At least that's how I understand it. It might be different for other people and how they believe in that. To me, shamanism and the shamanic process, the way I've seen it in a lot of ways, has always been this kind of,
Kind of stand back.
stand back and do the thing. It was never really hands-on unless there was some sort of hands-on laying on of hands of healing, and Hawaiians have that too. That's Lau Lima, which is kind of sort of what sometimes what we do in Lomi, but they're, you know, the expanded workshop that had the other stuff in it that I didn't show in that, which was more the performative shamanic techniques of, you know, helping that person to feel like something's really coming out of them, and other things that we were doing, you know, aligning, clearing, and all that, where, you know, we're still in that hollow space, but we are also going through these motions of like, okay, I'm clearing this midline. I want to align this. I want to contact this person's throat chakra to kind of, maybe they're, you know, the type of person that doesn't really speak out as much. They don't speak their truth as much because there's a disconnect between here and here.
Sometimes you can actually feel it in the hands that you're being informed spiritually as well as mechanically.
You're sensing what that body is needing at that particular moment. You're in that moment, and you're saying, you know, this is what my teacher Tom, and one of my favorite sayings that he would always say as we're doing work is this moment, this moment, this moment. Those were his words, but I think he got that from, you know, the how present the work is. You know, this moment, this moment, this moment, which helps you to focus in and sense what that body is needing, how they're feeling. And maybe they're not being able to speak their truth. This might help them to better speak their truth, or it won't.
But that's also going to their choice too.
That's their choice too.
Willing to let it in all the way.
Right.
That's also part of the task for any person receiving any body work.
Yeah.
It's the question of how much are you willing to let go today.
Yeah.
The more body work you receive, the better you get also at saying, I can let go more and more and more. And I've even seen this outside of spiritual practice in massage. It's the same aspect where, okay, well, I'm receiving this and I'm learning how to receive it. But this is the next level. This is where spirituality meets it.
Yeah.
And this spirituality is non-assuming of, like you said, not proselytizing you, telling you that this is what spirituality is, and this is how you need to live it in your life. And it's building the practice of non-attachment to the other person believing the way that you do, yet you can heal and love in the same way, and in a non-attached way.
Right.
But like a brother or sister or a grandmother, you know, or a grandson or a granddaughter. You know, they can receive the work without the attachment of, I place this value on you, or I give this lesson to you. You let it move right through, and it smoothly helps them get what they need.
One thing I will explain very, very briefly about why we do what we do in the movements. So without getting into the spirituals of it, let's look at the other side of why we do these techniques the way we do. So the brain can only follow so much when you're getting this work done. And in the workshops, we learn in tandem, two people working on one body. Most people will never go through an experience where they're experiencing tandem work. When you're doing this work, you're primarily doing it solo, and they're receiving it solo, which is still in and of itself, it's still hard for the brain to follow the techniques and the movements. And because our movements and our techniques are in concentric circles and figure eight patterns, that's really hard for the mind to follow, because one minute I'm here, and then I'm circularly moving down to the lower back, and then I'm back up here, then I'm down at your foot. And the brain is trying to follow that, because in the beginning you're in your frontal cortex and you're in that assessment and judgment mode. Okay, what's this person doing? And then coupled with the music, coupled with your movement and breath, and those figure eight movements that you're doing on the body, it confuses the brain to where it can't follow it anymore, and it kind of allows you to just relax deeper into yourself and give you a more relaxed state of mind, and therefore calming the nervous system down. That might be an upregulated nervous system, or high strung. The movements are so flowy and watery and circular, and though that feels really good to the body. It's almost like you rub your body like this. Yeah, this feels okay. This is energizing. But doing this,
it adds more presence.
There's more of a soothing quality to it, which in turn the nervous system picks up on that as, oh, this is safe touch, whereas this might be, oh, this might be potentially damaging.
Yeah.
This is not at all, because we're not doing that. Even with the mindful elbow that we learn with some of the deeper stuff, even that doesn't get registered in the brain as this noxious stimuli that might, that might be received as damage.
Mm-hmm.
So the circular movements, the figure eight movements, why we do those movements on the body is that we're trying to get the mind to calm itself down, the nervous system to calm itself down, so that the person receiving can have a better experience and be able to relax a little bit more and let go physically. And then when that lets go, then sometimes the emotion stuff lets go. Sometimes that stuff gets released.
The stuff that
and
was trapped before.
Right. Because trauma in the body, we always say, oh, the trauma gets stored in the body. Well, literally that's not true. Trauma is stored here. We have a memory of that trauma. It refers itself to different parts of the body.
That's awesome.
It's referred to different parts of the body.
That's a big statement, actually.
And in that we can go into that with a spiritual process, I think, to kind of say, okay, now we're releasing trauma here in the knee, we're releasing trauma in the lower back. But really what we're doing is we're calming that nervous system down, taking this and moving it safely back to here to be more aware of, okay, now I get back into my senses, what I can taste, what I can see, what I can feel, what I can hear and smell, and all of that sort of thing, bringing it back to the six senses. So there's that version of it. Now the spiritual part of it, you just have to come to a workshop to learn that. That's something I'm not going to put out there, because I want to give people an idea of what this work is, somewhat from a spiritual and a cultural standpoint, being a foreigner and not native Hawaiian, but being somebody where this work helped my nervous system to calm down at a point in my life where this was, I wasn't in control. This helped me reestablish that control. So to me, that's the practical application of your spiritual work, which I'm a very big proponent of. I'm very shrewd about that. It's like, what's the practical application of any type of spiritual discipline you're doing? What is this really doing for you? And be able to ask yourself those questions and answer, okay, practically what's happening? Well, in Lomi, practically, we're really trying to help the person to feel less broken. We're trying to help them feel at peace. We're trying to help them feel like there is a purpose to all of this, and it is either a divine purpose or it's a purpose that wants you to still be here and wants you to succeed and wants you to walk in this life feeling in control. Because, man, we know what it's like to feel out of control.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to feel out of control. And usually what helps us get back in control, it's the external world to a degree. And how that external world has a relationship and how it touches you. So the external, here, your world, how I connect with you, how I help us reestablish that relationship and how you establish that relationship. So we do it with love, we do it with non-judgment, we do it with the space, that space of aloha, and also with that clear mind, that mind of who we call it of hollow bones.
So also hearing patience.
Yeah.
Being very important here too.
Yeah, and being patient with the process and not, because, if we get impatient with the work, then we're getting into our headspace and our agenda. And if we start to feel that way, it's like you go back to the basics. Breath. You go back to your breath. You go back to your breath. That's what brings it all back. That's what kind of takes, what's rattling up in here and brings it back to here. Just the awareness of your breathing, of how air is filling into your lungs, how your diaphragm is decompressing and then contracting to bring it back out. All of that stuff, you're bringing your awareness back into here.
Into the body and not in the mind.
Right.
The mind
But it
can
is
be helpful, but would you say it's like 10% mind, 90% body?
I think it's
Maybe
100.
40-60? What do you feel?
I don't consider I'm going to say it's 100% mind, 100% body.
Okay, it's both.
It's 100%. Okay, well, 50 and 50, but no, I really think it's 100% this and this and this. No separation, no one operating more so than the other. It's all working in conjunction. That's harmony. That's Pono.
And that feels like a stream of water.
It feels like a lot of things. For me, it feels like water. Sometimes it feels like wind. I'm really connected into wind. Sometimes it feels like lightning. I love the lightning. Sometimes it feels like a slow flow. Sometimes it feels, like a fast thunderclap.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of stuff, but it does feel flowy. I would say the main thing that I feel through all of it is, it's a water flow, because, why wouldn't it be?
And you said, Lomi Lomi, that the lineage is water-based.
It is, because these people lived on an island surrounded by ocean, and the ocean was their sustenance, as opposed, and the land was too. Aina was that too, but the ocean and the water and the currents was their lifeblood. So these movements, why wouldn't these movements mimic the water? They looked and they go, wow, I wonder how this feels, because how can I mimic this? How can I make somebody feel it? Maybe they're scared to go in the ocean. They're not ready to go in the ocean. How can I make them feel that they're in the ocean? Maybe I can do these strokes. Yeah, I'm just kind of rattling stuff off in my head right now.
I'm thinking canoeing too. Yeah. I'm like, kayaking, canoeing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a pattern there too.
It's almost like a story is being told in the action.
Yeah.
That seems to bring flow and inspiration, but is non-assuming.
Yeah.
That's a lot to hold.
Yeah.
And to be able to hold that, if you can hold the heart inside yourself, wow, you can be an awesome instrument for good. Intending good and actually acting out the good in play. And that is what I really wanted to bring in for you, coming in, talking with us today about Lomi Lomi. This right here is like the crescendo. And I feel like there's more that we do need to talk about. I know that we're at the end of our time right now, but I have a feeling that there's more to talk about there.
There's always more to talk about with it. There's always more to talk about stuff. I would say, we need the Native Hawaiian perspective.
Yes.
To come in, because this is my understanding of it, but I think, we need to find a Kanaka Maoli person out there who can come in and really talk, honestly about this. So bringing in a Native Hawaiian, trying to find somebody to come in who's knowledgeable about this, and to get that perspective, to get that perspective from them, and see how it, because I think that's ultimately important too.
Yes.
I think that's very important. I try to honor them and honor Kapuna ancestors as best as I possibly can, because they saved my life. Lomi saved my life. So I owe it a great debt that I don't think I'll ever be able to repay. But I'm paying it out now as best as I possibly can. So I think that's all I got, at least right now.
Well, that was a lot, and it was perfect. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
Jason Bratcher, everyone. And this is something to contemplate and feel within yourself. How are you meeting the difficulty that comes up in the mind? And how can you have 100% in the mind and have 100% in the body, and also allow space for your personal spiritual practice to come in? All three will ground you. So the mind, body, and spirit really do act as friends and are bonded. So to find your own way, this is one perspective. Find your own. And feel free to send any comments or shares on this video. And This is Jason Bratcher, and I will include information on his bio. And you can also go back and watch the earlier references of what makes Jason Bratcher by going to part 1 of this interview series. So thank you all for listening and watching. Have a wonderful time.